Okay, welcome everyone to Education on Air, and welcome to our session today. The benefits of going Google. So basically, just to explain why you want to listen to myself for the next 25 to 30 minutes, explain what the benefits. There are three things in education. I'm an educator myself, and there are three things that I feel that all of us educators are up against, and those three things are time, money, and IT. So we've probably all heard it before that. Time, we're all up against it for time.
Welcome everyone to
we're all up against it for time because there isn't enough time in the week, it seems to be, an educator with all of our lesson planning, our marking of works. That's the thing you hear regularly. I just don't have the time to do these new things. Money, the reason for that being that it's very hard to get a budget for things, it seems, at times, particularly in the UK at the moment in education. So that's a factor as well. We just don't have enough money to do these, these things that we want to do. And the last one being IT. That I'm not a techie person, and IT isn't my thing, and the computers, they don't always do what I want them to do. So really the reason, as I say, for you to sit here and listen for the next 25 to 30 minutes is I'm hopefully going to reduce all of those three things from your life as an educator, and hopefully with some of them completely get rid of them altogether. So to be more productive with your time, and using it in the right way, to not need to go to finance and try and secure funding to be able to do things for yourself that are free or very minimal in cost. And also, just to reassure everyone, I am not a techie person myself, and you'll probably notice that as I'm doing my Hangout today, and I make lots of mistakes during this live broadcast, but I'm not a techie, and I joined this sort of Google revolution as a non-techie, and I've seen how easy it is. So all the things that I'm going to show you today, 95% of it is completely free. And also it won't take any time, a very small amount. Obviously naturally it will take some time, but a very small amount, and it's stuff that you'll be able to do on Monday morning without any sort of technical ability. The fact that you've logged into this Hangout today shows me that you know enough to be able to do all the things we're going to show. So in this 25-30 minutes I'm going to bombard you with little tricks and tips and even experiences of mine that have worked for me and that hopefully will work for you as educators. So to kick things off, I'll just show you, these are the apps that we're currently using at the moment. These are the Google apps, and I know there are lots of people over the course of today who are going to be talking about these apps in detail, and I'll just read them off to you really. Gmail for sending emails, Google Drive for collaborating and sharing and creating docs. YouTube is a resource that you use quite heavily, and I'll come on to that in a little while. For watching videos basically, and Google Hangouts, which we're currently using at the moment, and also Google Classroom. Below me you might notice that we've got two other speakers here. We've got John Newins on the left, which is our head of digital learning at the college, and on the right is Paul Roberts, our curriculum team leader for English and Maths. Now throughout the session you'll be able to write questions below, and both John, Paul and myself will be hopefully answering those questions, and any that we don't get through in the session we can come back to later and fill them out for you so you can see. And we'll be having a chat with them a bit later on. So I'll just go back to my broadcast. Okay, so basically my job at the college, I work at Barking and Dagenham College, which is where I am right now. I'm in our lovely STEM centre, our Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths centre. And my job, I work with students with learning difficulties and disabilities, so huge challenge in that department with regards to different levels of students and massively different learning styles that suit each of the individual students. It makes differentiation quite a challenge. So basically I embarked on this Google journey about 2 years ago, and I'm going to show you one of our students, and this student is a girl named Charlotte. She'll be coming up on your screen in a second. This is Charlotte. Okay, so Charlotte is she came to us 2 years ago, and she was a very good level of maths. Okay, her maths was very high for a student in my department, level 2. Her English, however, was pre-entry. She was unable to read or write, heavily dyslexic, which meant she couldn't read and write. And as a result, Charlotte's confidence was very low. So that kind of impacted on her learning. She would rarely stay in the classroom. She would often, due to being embarrassed, and you can understand that, would leave, and that made it very difficult to kind of help Charlotte. But one day, this was after we'd joined using all the Google apps. One day I sat with Charlotte and I thought, well, there must be another way. At the age of 16, 17, if she can't read or write at this point, it's not to say that she can't improve, but there must be another way of doing this, and I wonder if technology will do that. So Charlotte had an iPhone, it was her phone, and so one day I sat with her and I said, you know, like, have you tried finding any apps? So I was interested in finding an app that could read for her. And before we did that, actually, sorry to go back slightly, was we used Google Search and the voice function, the Google Search by OK Google. And we used that for her to be able to find that information. So she could just simply speak to her phone and it would speak back to her. And I'm sure we're all familiar with that function. Now that gives Charlotte, you know, huge potential. She can now start finding out information and she doesn't need to be able to write it. Even down to getting spellings, she can just use Google Search, get the spelling and copy and paste it and use it. But that doesn't stop the fact that she can't read. Charlotte was given a handout during one lesson. Now that would seem, you know, completely pointless because Charlotte can't read a handout. And naturally, us as teachers would do that in a different way. But then I thought, well, outside of the classroom, people are unaware of Charlotte's inability to be able to read. Bus timetables, letters through the door, and things like that. So simply, using her iPhone, we went on the App Store, or I think we did a Google search originally, and found an OCR reader. I can't remember what that actually stands for. John will probably be able to explain that later on. But that OCR reader, basically what it will do is it will take written text and it will convert it into computer text, which then on her phone, effortlessly, she can take a picture of whether it be that sign behind me, whether it be a letter through a door or a bus timetable, and it will convert it to digital text, which she can then, using her iPhone's features, make it then speak to her. So now Charlotte can read and write. Well, she can't, but she doesn't need to anymore. She's found a new way. And it might not be the quickest way, but it certainly means that she can now participate independently. And that's one of the things, you know, in my department we strive to do, is to make our students, you know, as far independent as they can be, and to give them those skills they need to go out and get a job and be fully independent. So for Charlotte, the success story of Charlotte was that she went on to do a paint and decorating course, and she then left the college and got a job, and she's now being paid. And so that is a game changer. Just that simple app, simple searching on Google and finding that app. It was free. There was no cost, very little time, and no IT expertise needed there. So the app that we used was called OCR, LeadTools OCR application. I'll share a slide with you so you can see exactly what it looks like. Okay, and it's really simple to use. That's the name of it there. And after this presentation, I will chuck in the resources, all these apps that we're currently using. So moving on, we have a young man that was with us again. That was around a year or so ago. This is Dogan, and Dogan basically he's blind. And he can see minimal amounts, so he can see some colour and he can see some shapes, but the finer details he can't see. Now, Dogan was participating in our ICT classes, and you know, you could argue, well, why give this young man a laptop? Now, what we've been doing up until this point was, and this seems quite normal to do, and you know, not necessarily right. Dogan was given this heavy laptop, very clunky, took about half an hour to load up. Had to have someone that knew how to use a specialist software that helped him because he's blind and it speaks to him. And that's not criticising the software so much, but you know, what would Dogan do when he leaves college? How will he find this software? Has he got a computer that can do it? Now, again, it all kind of came from Google initially. We were using Google Apps, and I knew that they would work on a phone. Dogan, as you can see in this picture, has an iPhone, and he used to use it to text his family. So then one day I sat with him again and said, Dogan, can you install Google Drive and Gmail and various other Google apps that we were currently using? And he installed them, and straight away he was off. He knew how to use the accessibility function better than I did because he was used to using it. And he basically was able, again now, to participate in class with his ICT from his phone. As you can see, I think you can see in the picture there, there's some laptops in the background that other students are using. Dogan doesn't use a laptop, he uses his mobile phone. It's a valuable tool that works for him. Again, Dogan went away and then came back a couple of days later and said, you know, this is amazing. Like, I can use Google Maps and it tells me how to get to the bus station. And on the way, it talks to me. He doesn't need to be able to see it because as he's walking, it's telling him turn left, turn right, walk forward. He understands it. So that again was a nice story really, and it wasn't using anything huge. It was all free again. It's all there. It's there for the taking. It was another sort of success really that we were able to build on. Now, just going on to some of the devices that we're currently using at the college, I feel it's important to show you this because we currently, I'll just get the slide up. These are the devices that we're currently using. We have obviously the desktop computers. We have them in a lot of rooms. iPads and things like that. We have some here at the college, but a lot of students have got tablets themselves, and also these laptops that maybe not so clunky as the one that Dogan had, and also smartphones. Now all of these devices, they're all able to use the stuff that we're using, and more so now. Some people argue, no, not all colleges and schools have got all these devices. Now I'm sure you have one of those, if not more, and also you don't necessarily have to have it, because the students themselves have it. I've noticed more recently students coming in with smart devices, and if they don't have it now, within a year or two's time, I expect that nearly everybody will have these devices, because they're handed down over time, and you've got devices now that in people's hands that can basically run a business. So I don't see that being an issue anymore. So anyway, the devices that we are using, they enable us to open our classroom up even more. And kind of what I'm keen to show today is not stuff that takes a lot of IT knowledge to use. And one of these theories that came about, it was from doing some Google Talks. Myself and John Below, we do some of these Google events, and we meet other people, and it's all about this sharing. That's one of the things that Google is really good for, is sharing and collaborating all this really great stuff. And became familiar with a learning style, a teaching style called SOL, Self-Organized Learning Environment. And for those that are not familiar with it, it's Professor Sugata Mitra. He put a computer in a wall in a deprived area, a different country, and he wanted to see what would happen when people found this computer. And he found that the local people, because it was a very deprived area, they came and they used the computer to their advantage, and they learnt how to do various things and taught themselves skills that they wouldn't have been given the opportunity to do before. And I know that he's working with schools. He worked with our college in trying this and rolling this out, where instead of you teaching from the front as an educator, that you allow students, you pose a question and allow them to teach themselves. So this was a theory that I was interested in. In its extreme sense, I thought that it's very difficult to do, particularly with my students. But the more and more I've started using this technology, I've realised that as a teacher, it's not all about us. We don't need to know all the knowledge. I certainly don't know it all. And it's more about being able to give people the ability to go and find it and learn for themselves. So I'm just going to give you an example of where we would use this self-organized learning environment, and using minimal tech. So this isn't something you need to go out and buy a load of stuff. This is one of my students. Her name is Gemma. Okay, now this was I wanted to see if students could learn by failing, and I know that's true anyway. So the idea was I want the students to learn themselves, because if they could do that in the world that we live in, with it constantly changing, they've got to be able to go out into the world and be able to adapt with jobs and things like that. So the task of this day was, in this hour session, was you need to basically learn how to make a paper swan. So the task was to make a paper swan, and the student said, well, how am I going to do that? And I said, well, I don't know, because the truth was I didn't know, and very little prep time in that. So I said, off you go, you're going to learn how to make a paper swan. You can use whatever you want to do it. Now the students, they used their initiative, and they got out their laptops. Some used their phones, some used their tablets, and they began searching online how to make a paper swan. Now Gemma is a typical student where it's, I can't do it, it's too hard. So Gemma, her first attempt, this is Gemma's first attempt, okay? So this is Gemma's reaction, very embarrassed, I can't do it, it's too hard. And I explained to them that the only failure in this task would be that if they gave up, but they've got to learn from their mistakes. So if it doesn't look like a swan, well, why doesn't it? Go back and look again. And so Gemma had another go, and this is looking a little bit more like a swan. I think we can all agree it doesn't look like a swan. This is her next attempt. So now, we're getting there. She's starting to realise that she's not following the instructions quite well, and she's had another go. And then this is her on her last attempt. And this was only about 3 or 4 attempts. The video, I think, was only a couple of minutes long. Now you can see the expression on Gemma's face. Although she was embarrassed because of taking the pictures, she was very happy that at the end she had managed to successfully, make this paper swan. And one of the great things about this was that it wasn't the technology making this happen. This was Charlotte, Gemma. Sorry, I keep saying Charlotte. This was Gemma in this. She had to, work out how she was folding the piece of paper. She had to follow the instructions. The skill there was she was learning it, and she was only using the laptop as the tool to give her that knowledge. Now you could use this in any scenario. It could be a plumbing student learning how to fit a toilet. They might watch a YouTube video, they might do it and it fails. Not the end of the world. They go back and they learn why it failed. And that's more valuable, well, it definitely is more valuable, is failing and learning from your mistakes rather than just being shown. And I saw another example of this where it was a cooking lesson. Half of the class were given a recipe with all the ingredients, and the other half were given just the ingredients and a laptop. And they were told, one side were obviously going to follow the instructions, and the other side was said, work out a dish to make. And the learning involved in that, having to go and find out, well, what goes with ginger? Because I don't know. What goes with that? Maybe they could look online, maybe they could try that. A lot of experimenting going on there. And again, the technology there, maybe they're using Google, but the technology isn't doing it for them. They're actually having to do it. They're just using that as a tool. Now, those that follow the recipe, what have they learned? They've learned how to follow a recipe, yes, but do they know what works and what doesn't work? So that's kind of the idea behind SOL, and I feel that should be used in every single classroom. Not to the extreme of just leaving the students to it, but certainly taking away that sort of teacher-led environment and letting students go off and explore and fail. So learning to fail, failing to learn.